Hey, welcome everybody. It's Chris Petri. We're excited here. We're going to have another fun time painting a gorgeous and beautiful house here out in the rural landscape. We have interesting shadows, trees, bushes, some figures. We have some interesting power lines coming through the scene here, kind of leading our eye into the scene. We have a gorgeous rolling hill going up to the house, where we have some texture and weeds and grasses and rocks and things that we splashed on and put some really interesting weeds and little twigs and things in here in the foreground. We scrubbed on some paint for texture for the foreground here to keep it looking good. So you're going to learn all of these techniques on how to get these effects and techniques into your painting. So we'll be right back in just a second, and we'll start our pencil sketch of this scene. And then after that, we'll get into the painting. And this is a glazing technique painting, so you're going to have a ton of fun learning the glazing technique, which is basically a light wash of paint across the whole painting first. We let it dry 100%, and then we come back in and we do the darker washes, as you can see here, the darker tonal values in this painting. So we'll be right back, and we'll get started. All right, let's get started. We just saw the finished painting, and we're actually going to get right into the pencil drawing portion of this video. And this is going to be a wonderful, exciting painting of a house on a hill. We'll have some fun shadows and light, some interesting details in the foreground with some weeds and things like that. We'll have like maybe a telephone pole in this thing. You know, this painting kind of makes it interesting, having a little bit of that rural feel where, you know, you have telephone poles and trees and things like that. And we're going to have just a lot of fun here. So let's get started with our pencil drawing. So I always like to just go around the paper and do a little border, just so it reminds me that I'm working inside of this rectangle right here. And that really helps me to focus, and that's where all my work is going to be, within this rectangle. Here, my pencil line is the border that I'm working with around this composition. So the first thing I'll do is I'll try to, in my mind, say, where am I going to put the, and this is kind of like just a fun improv. I do have a picture that I'm working from, but again, it's probably a copyright issue if I put it on camera. So that's why I don't always put my pictures of what I'm working from. But you'll work from this finished painting, so you'll figure out a way, whether you got to just pause your camera, pause your phone, or your iPad, or your home computer, your laptop, whatever you're working on. Maybe you can hit pause and then just use your phone or your laptop or so forth, your electronic device, set up across from you, and you can work right from my finished drawing and my finished painting. I'm hoping you'll do that. So here I'm just going to kind of have a nice trailing hill going up here. And so maybe this is about a quarter of the way, even less than a quarter of the way up the sheet of paper here. So if we kind of said this is halfway, this is a quarter, so a quarter here, a quarter here, a quarter here. This is almost like an eighth up from the bottom. And then we're just going to have a nice kind of feel here. And then we'll go up to about a third of the paper here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so this is about a third here. 1/3, 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. So the top of this rolling hill will be about a third up here and about an eighth or a quarter down here. And we'll do a little house here. We'll have some fun. Let's see. We'll do this here. So we're going to have a house here. Like that. We have a chimney over here in the back. And then maybe over here there's another bit of Alright, so that's just a nice simple house here. We'll have a couple chimney pots on there like that. And we'll maybe put a window up here. A couple windows here maybe. Do a couple here, a couple here. Maybe we'll do the front door here. Some steps there and some railings. And what else are we going to do here? So we're going to have a fun time with this. We have the house here just sketched in roughly. We'll keep this simple. And then maybe we'll use our ruler here. We'll get a telephone pole over here. So we'll put a telephone pole over right about here. Like that. And we'll just do a couple cross members here on our telephone pole and a couple supports, some cross supports here. And we're going to maybe have a couple transformers, maybe one over here, one over there. And we'll have some isolators up there for the wires. We're going to do some wires too here, some communication. These will be power wires basically. And we'll just do that. We'll just kind of do some pencil. We're going to do these with the paintbrush, of course. And that makes a good feel. Some power lines going by the house. Maybe we can have a little, for the power lines, a little conduit there. And if you have a little smudge with your pencil marks, you just erase them up a little bit. They usually, most things get fixed with the paint when we do the watercolor paints onto our painting. It usually looks pretty good once we're starting to paint. You don't see much of the pencil lines anyway at all, practically. Okay, so we're having a good time here. Just getting our painting laid out. We're going to make a thicker pole here for the telephone pole. So I'll just make sure to do that, like that. And these are a little thicker too. We'll paint these in. Of course, you can always adjust when you paint. Always remember does this make sense? When you're painting in watercolor, you can always adjust. So when you're drawing, you don't always have to get your drawings perfect at all, because you can always add different brush strokes and thicker lines with your brush. So maybe if you're just sketching things out, you can always make things thicker. So I could just put one line down here, really, one pencil line for my telephone pole, and then when I come back in and paint it, I know I'm going to be going a little bit wider, making it a little bit thicker. But if you can get it in pretty accurate with your pencil lines, you're probably better off, because in this way you're really getting it somewhat, almost like 90% accurate. But you do have that little bit of leeway to adjust things when you are painting. So always remember that. Don't ever fret or get worried that you can't change things from your pencil drawing. You can adjust after you do your pencil drawing. You can adjust while you're painting. You're painting with your watercolors. So just want to mention that. That's a really good tidbit there. Okay, so we have a gorgeous looking house here, and let's see where we have the light coming from. Let's maybe we'll have the light coming from over there, coming this way. So let's pretend the light is. I'll draw a light insignia up there, like this, with a bulb and the light shining like this. And if we did it larger, it would look like this. There's the bulb there, and the light's like this. So it's kind of shining at us. That would be like the sun. So the sunlight is coming from in front of us, shining this way. So we're going to get more of like a, it's not going to be too bright on this side of the house. We're going to get backlighting though, which will make it look interesting, a brighter looking sky. And I think that'll be good. And then maybe let's Let's put a tree over here. Maybe there's a tree over here too. So we'll put a tree alongside the houses over here, alongside the house. And I just put a little indication so that I can paint in those trees, the leaves and the trunks. We can just do that. So there's a tree here. There's another one behind the house, so we're not going to see the trunk on that one. And then over here there's another tree, and we'll see a tree trunk over here maybe. Like that. And then there's another one back here. So we have beautiful trees behind the house, and maybe there's a few trees down over here. We'll put a few more over here. There's maybe like a hill over here, and there's some trees on the hill this way, and it's kind of interesting. We'll have a couple bushes over here too, maybe like that. And I think that should be good, and we'll have maybe a couple bushes up here. Maybe a couple rocks. There's a couple rocks up here on the hill. And this looks pretty good. All right, so our pencil sketch is done. Can you believe it? We got through our pencil sketch in just 10 minutes. This is fantastic. So this is what we're doing a really fun house here, a hill. It's on a nice, beautiful rolling hill. We have a power pole here with some communication lines, some power lines. Very rural where I live. There's lots of telephone poles everywhere, so I'm very used to seeing that. It's very comfortable for me to see this type of stuff. Maybe some areas near my house there might be underground wiring and things like that. So you know, it depends where you live. You might have underground utilities or above ground utilities, but in any case, this looks fine. I like this look. And let's do another window over here like that, and I think we're all set. Okay, so next thing is the painting portion, and we're going to have a ton of fun getting those washes on the paper. And again, this is an extreme beginners video, so this is where we're using very practical, inexpensive art supplies. This is a Prang Oval 16 set. I always mention this because this is one of my favorite sets, and you know, they don't pay me to say this or anything like that. I'm not getting any money from Prang, but it is a great palette. It's got beautiful colors. You can pull these colors out and buy a new palette and then plug in colors. If you ran out of one or two colors, you can just grab a new palette and grab colors out of there like this and pop them right in spots where you're missing some colors. If you're kind of running low on a color, you just buy a new set. They're inexpensive. They're not that expensive, actually. And for a brand new artist, if you're an extreme beginner, you're just starting out, you don't need the fancy tube paints and all that. Besides, it's a hassle. Maybe after a year of painting, then you might say, okay, I'll get some tube paints. They're a little more expensive. And the fancier brushes, of course, are more expensive, but we're using some simple brushes here. Simple paint set, inexpensive, because when you're first starting out, you don't want to be spending, you know, hundreds and thousands of dollars on paint gear and artist gear. You want to keep it simple and get yourself started and get the ball rolling. And then after a while, you start building up a little bit of a new brush here, a new brush there, a couple tube paints here and there, and then that's how you do it. So let's come back and we'll start painting, okay? All right, so we're getting started again. Let's get some light washes. We're going to do the glazing technique again. So this is a very popular technique and method that watercolor artists use, the glazing technique, and we're going to show you exactly how we're going to do it right now. So the first thing is with the glazing technique, let's mix up some colors that we're going to use so that we have those already ready to go in our palette. So I'm mixing some orange, cadmium orange, and some cadmium orange light and cadmium orange. That's what I would call these colors. So I kind of have names for all of these colors that are the normal colors I use in my regular everyday palette that I use. So if you hear me refer to these as different colors, I also have videos on palettes. So you can look up Chris Petri palettes, and you'll be able to find the video very easily if you just type in Chris Petri palettes. You'll find that I have a video here where I name each color with the normal colors that I use on my everyday palette, so it makes it easier. So when I'm mixing my paints and I'm using these paints, I just basically use them like they're my regular tube paints, which makes it easier for me to paint. And when I describe it, those of you that have been with me a long time, you can actually use your regular tube paints, because many of you probably have tube paints already and you have your paint sets all with the same colors that I describe in this one. Not to confuse things, but I'll usually give all of these names as I'm working right now and as I'm mixing them. So if you just follow along and kind of, you maybe jot down some notes once in a while, or you can look up Chris Petri palette on YouTube. If you just type in that, you'll see I have like probably 10 or 15 palette videos on colors and everything. So you can look through those and kind of figure out what I'm doing here with this one. But in any case, I just have the palette warm over here and then cool colors over here. So the blues and the greens over here, or, you know, pretty much warm over here, and then it starts to get the cooler colors here and then over this way, and then the black and the white. And that's really it. So it's not too complex. So we're going to get in here and start our washes. So the first thing is we're going to plan out our colors and say, okay, what are we going to use? Well, for the sky, let's use our blues. So we'll get that blue in there. That's kind of like a cerulean blue. This is like a French ultramarine blue here. So we're getting our light washes here. We're not going with anything too dark. So you can kind of see how those are pretty light. And that should be good. We'll get a really light glazing over this whole painting. Let's start out, and let's start just putting a light glazing on everywhere. I'm using a square brush. It's a Da Vinci square brush. It's a 30 millimeter brush, and it's synthetic. So I'm using some orange, maybe some yellow mixed in with that. Probably looks a little better with some yellow. So I'm using warm and cool, making sure I blend this all down in here. So that's all. You get some blue and some orange, and you just start lightly using clean water, fresh clean water, and you're picking up your colors like this and just lightly flowing it onto the paper like this. If you need more paint, you just go in, grab a little more paint like that, a little more orange in there maybe, like that. And I would use cross strokes like this, like X's. Just X's make it real easy. You can't go wrong with X strokes, where you just kind of do this and just flow the paint on nice and easy. And use plenty of water. This is the first glazing, so. And I'm just going to cover the whole house because the light's behind us, so we're not going to have too much really bright light with shadows and things like that on this painting. It's going to be more of a subdued, mellow and relaxed painting. And then we just do this here. We get that paint, and that looks good. We have our first glazing done. Look at that, how beautiful that looks. Smooth out some of those. If you see any kind of like puddles in there or anything like that, just get them smoothed out. You have some time to work as you go. And if you're using, I'm using Fabriano paper here. If you're using like a less expensive watercolor paper, just remember that you'll have even less time to work. Usually more expensive paper gives you more time to put washes on and continue to work like this. If you're using a less expensive paper, most times you really just gotta probably wet the paper first a little bit with clear water, fresh, clean, clear water, and then just go real fast and get in your washes really super quick and use a large brush, because I've many years I worked with inexpensive paper and it was really tough. And then when I started trying out the more expensive papers, you really can see the difference when you're using more expensive papers. But when I first started, I didn't have enough, funds to buy the fancy paper. So I had to save up for years until I could afford to get a little stockpile going of good paper, better paper. But you'll do that too. You'll save up and get some better paper eventually. Or maybe you have a little stash of money, you can get some now. So I'm using Fabriano rough paper, white paper, extra white. And that's it. Nice light wash over here. The whole painting, warm and cool everywhere. Blues and purples in the sky. Some orange, some warm orange feel there. And then what we'll do is we'll let this dry 100%, and then we'll come back and we'll paint over this a second glazing, a second wash with darker paints, where we'll get in the house, the roof, the windows, the door, the chimney. We're going to do the telephone pole, the bushes, the foreground. We'll do everything after this, subsequently, after this dries. So you have to let this dry 100%. So I'm going to take a break. I might use my blow dryer and blow dry this off and dry it quickly, or I might let it dry naturally and take an hour break, and then maybe blow dry it a little bit. Maybe after an hour it's going to dry quite a bit, and then finish with a little bit of more blow drying to get it really, really dry. And then that should be good, and we can go back in and work on it, okay? So that's the main thing. I was impressed, though, when you do the glazing technique and you're getting this first wash on, which is a really light wash, always recall you have to let this dry 100% before you go back in and start painting your trees and the house and anything else here. So this all has to dry 100% so that you can touch it with your hand and it's dry. Okay? So I'm going to come back in just a few minutes. And I always mention, if you're having a fun time on this channel and you're really enjoying the content, please remember there's the subscribe button down here on the right-hand side. All that's going to do is just, when you click on that button, it'll alert you the next time you open up YouTube. When you open up your YouTube icon on your phone or your computer, it'll just alert you if I've made a new video. You'll see it there first in your list of videos to watch. And that's all it is. There's nothing more complicated than that. YouTube is a great... they have a great idea of, if you really like my videos, they want you to make sure you can see them easily and you don't have to go searching for them. And that's all it is it's just really kind of like a search tool. If you click on subscribe, you won't have to go searching for my videos. They'll just kind of pop up in your YouTube queue when you're opening up YouTube the next time. Okay, that's all it is. So, and it's also great if you'll give me a thumbs up if you like these videos. This way, it helps me to become more popular on YouTube, and more people will get to see the videos. So thumbs up always helps me. And I really appreciate that you come by and watch my videos and work with us together. And the more you stick here on my channel and watch over and over every week, every month, and every year, your watercolor paintings are going to get so much better. So don't worry. You just got to keep working with us each week. Stick with us. And we cover all the fundamentals and all the main techniques of watercolor all the time, every time, so that you don't ever get lost in the sauce, so to speak. You're always going to learn the fundamentals, the basics of watercolor over and over and over, and it'll just keep getting easier and easier for you to paint watercolor. And that's really all it is, just going over the basics over and over. Okay, so we'll be right back once this dries, and we'll start painting the second glazing. All right, so we are back in the swing of things here. We're going to do the second glazing now. So we have an array of brushes here that we like to use. These are, I usually use the Princeton Art and Brush Company brushes for extreme beginners. You can get these. They're very inexpensive. They're great. They're synthetic brushes, which basically means that they're very, very... they don't hold as much water, so when you're mixing your paints and so forth, you already have an advantage that you're not going to have too much water flowing onto your paper. That might give you a problem. And this brush comes with the Prang set, which is a nice round brush, synthetic round brush. And then I also use a Simmons, Simply Simmons number 6 round brush, synthetic. This is a little larger, holds a little more water, a little larger brush, right? So you can get some larger washes. And so between these brushes here, we're looking pretty good. There's also, let me see. There's a few more Princeton brushes. Here's another. This is a larger. So I think in the pack that you can buy, like a 5-pack, there's a few more. There's maybe another round brush as well that comes in the 5 brush pack, which is the Princeton Art and Brush Company. These are great. You can get these on any place online or in your art store, local art stores. So we have plenty of brushes here to work with, so let's get started. And let's mix up a little bit of paint ahead of time so that we're sort of getting ahead of the curve. So I have some water, fresh clean water. Let's maybe practice our good habits we always do. A little bit of spritzing on the paints to get our paints activated a little bit. I took about an hour break. I'll mix up some paints, but first let me just take the palette and just get the puddles out of the palette and the other colors. We'll just start with a nice clean palette now to mix fresh colors. And that should be fine. So I think we'll do the we'll work on the house first, and I would say we can actually use this square brush. These square brushes work absolutely phenomenal for doing architecture, anything buildings, houses. Square brushes are really fantastic. So let's get the house. Let's get some washes mixed up for that, and let's mix up a green, blue, a little bit of brown to kind of gray stuff down a little bit of orange. Let's do something like that. And let's just go across like that. There we go. And that's, you can see I don't overmix it in like a blender and just blend it and blend. I just get the colors in there and then just swish it around a few times so it blends a little bit, but not too much. And then we can just do this. And we can go right over this whole thing here. We're in shadow now. So the light's behind the house, so you're not going to see any really bright sunlight here. And let's get a little bit of red for the foundation of the house. So we're going to try to get a little interesting red foundation color. That might look good. Like that. There might be some brick there. And the same thing over here. And we're going to leave these steps go for now. What we might do is, once this dries a little bit down here, we'll do something a little different there in the steps area. And I'll just add a little bit of that red up here too, and here and there, like that. And that's about all the time we have to mix colors back into this bluer kind of mix on this house, right? You can kind of see how it's already starting to, what I do is I rinse off my brush, dry off my brush on a tissue, and then I can just do a very damp brush just to maybe sort of mellow out those spots that are starting to appear. So that's why usually when you do one wash, you kind of have to let it go and not go back into it again. But if you do go back in, it's got to be super fast. And even when you go in really quickly, it still can, this got away from me a little bit, but it looks good now. I kind of used a damp brush just to kind of smooth out those washes. All right, let's go in and we'll get a more of a, maybe let's do a touch of black here and brown, black and brown. A little bit of blue, like that, a little bit of red. Let's do a little more blue, like that. Let's do a roof color. So I made this roof a little bit like a darker color. And when you start to do your roof, you can make it a little larger if you want, like so. This way we can kind of bring it out over here a little bit. That's what I was saying about before. Do you recall that I said that before when we were kind of just first starting? Once you're starting to paint, you can extend and change some of the features of your painting because you're painting now, and you can take the brush and kind of add some lines and extend things out a little more. So I think that is really a good example of that right here, what we're doing. We're just making that roof a little further out there. We can always tap on this a little bit, give it a little bit of more interesting texture to it. And then let's kind of do our chimney. Very simple with a square brush, flat brush. You just do that, and that's all good. And we'll do the chimney pots on top next, but we're going to wait. And we'll deal with this little bit of issue here. You see that kind of blossomed and bloomed. We'll fix that a little bit later. We can even put in a bush maybe later with maybe some greens in there, so like a green bush or something. So you can always add some things in to hide a little bit of some issues you might have as you're painting. But I think that looks good so far. Let's keep going here. Let's take our Simply Simmons. We'll mix up some greens, a little bit of brown and green, make like an olivey kind of color. Gray it down a little more. And we're going to do our trees over here. And what we do is we leave some we try to leave some a little bit of airspace in between some of the leaves on the trees. And you can kind of see that it's not always perfect when it comes to watercolor painting. You can sometimes, like these washes here, like here we're having an issue. The paint is bleeding into the roof because we just painted the roof. We should have probably waited until the roof dried 100% before we did our trees, but I went ahead and got a little bit ahead of myself. Same over here. So usually you can kind of work around that. Another way to do that is to keep your tree a little bit away from the roof and the chimney like this, like leave a little bit of paper there, dry paper, and then later you can come back. And I'm just doing some circular motions here, like this. Sometimes I'll do this. You paint right up to the and I'll just make a little bit of mix here for the like that, and this one too here. Rinse off the brush, dry off the brush a little. I get a little bit of paint there, and then just do this, and like that. So that's really the fun of watercolor painting. You get used to the way things handle, when to be careful not to paint next to something that's too wet so that it doesn't infiltrate in there, like over here. So now you can kind of see how I worked around that by leaving a bit of white paper along the roof edge, and then once it dries a little bit, then you can fill it in. The reason why it blossoms and it infiltrates so much into the roof when we were doing these trees over here is because you have all this area of wet paint, and then once you touch the roof that's still damp, all of that paint starts to flow in. Whereas if you leave that white spot next to the chimney or the roof over here, you let this area dry a little bit, then you fill in along the roof, and this is already starting to dry, so it won't all flow into that area. I hope that is kind of makes sense. So we have that there, and but still, these things happen when you're painting. You can't let it get to you. You just have to. If it really gets terrible, then you just take your paper, put it to the side, and you start another one. And you, instead of getting too worried about something, if your painting goes really bad, just don't worry about it. Start another one, or take a break for a couple days and get back a couple days later, and you'll be fine. These things happen all the time with watercolor. Watercolor does not always do what you want it to do. Alright, so we have some good washes here. We got our trees, our house, our chimney. Let's do the steps here. We're going to do some lines here, maybe. These some brick here. So you have bricks on the foundation and bricks on the steps. Like that. And we'll use our large, maybe let's do this. Before we use our large square brush, let's do these bushes and trees down here. And I'll make these a little more grayed down. You can kind of see how these are a little bit, I gray down the green a little bit so I don't make them too, a little bit of brown in there. So a little bit of gold, maybe some orange, and I'll just do a little scrubbing like this. This always looks good. Take the side of the brush and just kind of hold the brush like this and just do the scrubbing this way. And that gets you like your more finer tuned branches there. You can even go up here and do the same thing if you want to get a few of those kind of more delicate leaves and things. There we go. Now we can go in. Let's do our grass here in the front. We're really moving along well here. I think we're almost getting ready for, you know, the final parts to the painting. We're going to get some of these green grasses. Maybe we're going to use some gold, orange, yellow. And we'll have some greens here. And then we're going to do some maybe we're going to do some more. Let's do this. Yeah, let's get, that looks good. That's a good color. That really kind of looks good. We'll do details like wisps of grass and things once we, this might be a little darker here. Let's get some darker. Let's go with a little bit of darker wash. Green, orange, More green. Let's make it a little darker in front of here, in front of the house. We're going to recall that the sun is behind the house here. So there's shadows over here. So maybe the house is kind of like putting a shadow over here. Like that. And then even the trees. And then we go back to our lighter colors over here. Greens, yellows, greens. Now these large brushes really work wonders. You can cover a lot of ground with them. And we will go over this again with more details. So this looks like a large spot of color that's just all kind of like one large wash here, but trust me, we will get some, let's get some blue in there quickly. Some darker blue just to get the shadow here. Just an indication that there's a bit of a shadow there. Cast shadow in front of the house. And blend this up in here like that. Trees over here, a little bit of putting a shadow there. This up here, down this way like that. This over here. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, this is looking good. Let's take a break now. Let's let this all dry. We're going to go over this area here that we just painted, and this really has to dry for at least an hour or two, or if you use a blow dryer, you can dry it off a little quicker, and we can get to the details of this. We're going to put in some wisps of grass to make it a little more interesting. We'll put in some splashes here and there for rocks and interesting stuff like that. But we're going to let that dry though first. Okay, let's come back in just about maybe 10 minutes after we do a little bit of blow drying here on this foreground and the trees over here in the house. And we'll finish up with some details in the foreground here. The windows in the house too, we'll do some details on that and the door. And we'll do our telephone pole and some electrical lines here, and everything will come right together looking fantastic. I can do one thing here. Let's do the chimney pots here. So that's like an orangey brown color. So I'll just do a few of these. I'll make it a little darker, maybe a little black in there just to make it a little darker. I think it'll look a little better, darker. We're not going to do anything else to the sky, so we can do the chimney pots like that. And if we were going to do more sky wash, we wouldn't want to do something like this because that could reactivate and smudge and everything. So, but we're okay. I think we can even do some windows here. Yeah, we can do some windows now. So the paint is dry in here. I always try to wait and see how the paint's doing. The paint's dry now on the house. That bluish red, green, blue. We have all those cool, interesting colors there. So let's do the windows. And the door. Okay. A little bit of detail in those windows. Even darker yet at the tops. Usually it gets a little bit darker at the tops of the windows. where most of the shadow is. Same with the door there. So I'll just add a little bit of that black there. That always looks pretty good. A little extra dark there. And there's some railings. Maybe we could do some railings here. Like that, like this. Some railings. A little bit of a detail there. Maybe we'll do some lights. That didn't come out good. Let me lift that up. Okay, we'll do some lights here with maybe some wood color for the trim. Like this. Like that. Maybe some wood trim color here too. And over here, like that. And I think once we I'll touch that up a little bit, like so, just so we, like that. We can touch up things a little bit now that things are starting to dry really well. A little bit of texture there. All right, let's let this dry a little more. Let's see, we can still get some interesting shadows here, like so, over the bushes. We recall that the light's coming from behind the scene, so you're going to see these shadows like that. You're going to see these here too. Okay, so we're just trying to get those shadows in. That, so I just wanted to sort of make that a little bit of the pointiness of the roof. Maybe that works. Okay, now we'll do a few rocks up here. Okay. All right. Let's take a break and we'll come right back and we'll finish up. We'll do our telephone pole, our lines, and we should be good. Hey everybody, just a quick informational. I'm really excited. I've been invited to the Thousand Island Arts Center to teach a workshop this summer. It's August 9th, 10th, and 11th, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And it's a daytime workshop, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're going to have an absolutely fantastic time. I'm going to put up the itinerary in just a second too as well, but I wanted you to have the Thousand Island Arts Center phone number so you can call to register, or you can also register online. That's up to you. Their phone number is 315-686-4123. Again, their phone number is 315-686-4123. Or you can also register and look up all the information online at TIARTSCENTER.org. Again, their website is TIARTSCENTER.org. I'll put the itinerary up here so you can I'll scroll it. I'm not going to read it. I'll just kind of scroll it up so you can kind of see the class description. And you can look this up online too. I encourage everybody to look for the brochure. If you go to the website, you'll see a brochure button. You click on that brochure button, you'll see my course, as well as other courses if you can't happen to make these dates, but you still want to take a watercolor class or watercolor course and workshop. And there's also an online course for watercolor artists. So if you're interested in doing online watercolor courses, they have those as well. That's something this is a great resource, everyone, for your watercolor art. I know some of you mentioned that you wanted to inquire about online art and watercolor painting classes. I'm not doing them right now. I'm really looking forward to maybe in the future doing some online courses, but right now I'm just not geared up for that right now. So they have them though for those that want to do online courses. But just a great resource, and beautiful historic area, beautiful scenery, water and boats everywhere, beautiful architecture, shopping. There's museums. So that's the itinerary. And I hope you'll all make it out to the workshop. And again, we're going to have a great time, tons of fun drawing and painting in watercolor. So I hope to see you there. And let's get back to our watercolor painting. All right, we're finishing up here. Let's get started back here into the painting. So we'll do the telephone pole here. A little bit of black, brown, a little bit of blue. Kind of mix up a warm and cool. And I'll dry off some of that paint off my brush, and then I'll just go in and start going down a little bit at a time. Dry off the brush a little. Pick up a little bit of different color. It's always good to add some different colors here. A couple of the cross braces like that. Sometimes you can do a little quick brush stroke like this, and then quick go in and lift up a little bit. Like that. Looks good. And a little bit of blue. We'll do a little bit of blue under there for these cross members there, and then looks good. Then we might go to a even thinner brush like this for the for the wires. So for the wires, let's not make them too obvious. Let's kind of keep them pretty simple. So I would just kind of do them. I'll move my arm around to the side over here, dry off a little bit of the paint. I don't want a ton of paint on there. And I just do this, like that. That's all. And these here we can go up like that. It's a little more simple doing these here that go up this way. Like that. You make them a little lighter, just barely. Like that. So you just do a couple like that. Even a couple would have been fine, but I got a few extra in there, but no big deal. So these are just going across the side of the house along the way. So this is probably some lines that are going and continuing on down the behind the house. So they're continuing that way. Probably if I think I maybe added a few extra than maybe I would have normally. I would probably just do maybe one or two. I added a few extra in there, but even sometimes one or two is fine. Just one, two, and then maybe one up here, two up there is fine. But that's something that's like a feel thing, you know. After you paint something like this a few times, you know, maybe you'll try this painting a couple times. Maybe you try one with a little more lines, maybe a few with a little less lines, and you see how it works out. But that looks pretty good. I think it's pretty much everything. We can do a little more details here. A couple of weeds here and there. We'll get some of this, add a little more water to this, a little more paint. We'll do some more water, some more paint, and we'll do a couple splashes here. Along the front here, just for some texture. And a few more weeds like this coming up. Just like that, a few weeds. Just closer to the foreground this way. I wouldn't take these weeds and put them up higher up here along the top of this hill maybe so much. I would keep the weeds looking at the bottom of this here. And again, some more splashes, a little texture. Like that. And what else can we do? We can maybe make a little scrub on some texture here. There might be some, I just take the brush and just kind of scrub along here. Just do a couple of these. Makes it look interesting here more than just one kind of like large wash. Instead you have some a little bit of blue, like that. Too much, you can lift up a little bit with the tissue. You can dry off the brush a little bit before you. And sometimes when you just add these little bit of scrubs on here and texture, it looks better. It just kind of has more interesting texture and interest in there, so that when someone's looking at the painting, they feel like they have some interesting things to look around. You know, they can look around a little bit and find little interesting thoughts of things as their eyes going through the painting. Hopefully it's leading up to the house and they look at the house. So we have the blue and purple a little bit. I think we needed a shadow for this chimney here, like that. Maybe a little bit of shadowing under here. A little bit up here too, so we'll put some shadowing under there. Maybe a thinner shadow over here. You could add a little bit of warmer colors in that shadow too. A little bit of cooler too, some cool colors. Maybe add a little bit of a cooler wash to this chimney here. That looks better. Maybe we'll do a few figures. We take some of these darker shadowy kind of colors. Again, the light's coming this way, so the figures are going to be kind of darker. So we'll just do some darker figures over here. And then we can add some color to the figures too. Maybe a bit of color to the shirts or pants. And I think this is fine. I think we had a good time painting this and practicing our skills here with watercolor. Darken this up a little bit there. All right. So we had a lot of fun. We got a really gorgeous looking house in here. Some trees, some figures, bushes over here. A nice rolling hill leading up to the house. We had our telephone pole here with our power lines and communication lines running along this scene here. It kind of brings your focus into the house. And we had some details here in the foreground, some rocks and small weeds. You can make some warmer looking rocks maybe with some warmer looking colors too. That always looks good if you try to mix up your colors a little bit. Little sparkles of light, warm and cool, some dark rocks and little things like that, some orange. We did some scraping on of some texture with some maybe weeds and things like that, and some interesting texture to the foreground here so that it doesn't look just plain with no interesting features there. All right, so we will see you on the next video. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and coming by. We're going to be back again as soon as you can imagine. We'll be starting another painting before you know it. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.